price you pay to pursue your dreams. Grinding every day to get that dream. Ain't no holding back until you get your shot. One day you're gonna open your eyes and be on top. That's the price you pay to pursue your dreams. Grinding every day to get that dream. Ain't no holding back until you get your shot. One day you're gonna open your eyes and be on top. Been playing this game since I was 10 years of age. I wanted to make my mark ever since my Pop Warner days. When I strapped that helmet, I'm knocking dudes into a blaze. A lockdown corner going all the way through 7th and 8th grade. Entering high school, I'm ready to write another page. Busting my ass and lifting weights. It's a much higher level, but I'm still making plays. No time to party or bask in my glory days. It's college preparatory classes every single day. Living my life with that singular goal. It's the fire inside that makes me whole. Looking in the mirror, my muscles swole. I'm on a mission, and I'm never gonna stop. When the ball's in the air like Sherman, I'm a hawk. And I promise I'll overcome whatever life throws at me. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ageless Movement Podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Lohman.
I'm Sam Poignac.
All right, today we're going to talk about a few different things. Mostly we're going to focus on heart disease and deaths related to heart disease. To start things off today, we just want to kind of touch base with the whole Pfizer vaccines that are out now. And as you all know, if you've been watching the news even loosely and sortively, you know that it's going to be frontline healthcare workers that get the vaccines first. Then it's going to go to assisted living, people living in assisted living, and I imagine the essential workers that are working there too. Essential workers as well. And then eventually it's going to get out to the public at large. And that's going to be the difficult thing to do, is to get enough vaccinations to, of course, the 300 plus million Americans. I believe it's 325 million Americans, 325 million people who live in the United States. Getting the vaccines to them will be challenging, of course. With the Pfizer vaccine, of course, you have to keep it at colder temperatures. Also, there will be other vaccines obviously on the way. Johnson & Johnson's, AstraZeneca, Moderna's following shortly after Pfizer. Things are looking up in the vaccine end of things. However, I think there are two challenges, of course. The logistics of getting people vaccinated. The cost, of course. People that don't have health insurance, how we're going to cover them. And, of course, what's the third thing? Oh yes, getting people to actually get a vaccination, right? Because there's a lot of distrust. A lot of people feel like these vaccines were developed very quickly. And they were. They were even developed quicker than I even thought, but somewhat within the window that I predicted. I think for most of us, we'll probably be getting our vaccines, of course, in probably March, maybe April, which I think is a miracle. Things should be and if we're able to get on schedule and get the majority of people, meaning 70 to 75% of Americans vaccinated, things should be really looking up in the summer, considering if we get the numbers down, we get people vaccinated, we just get some relief for the ICUs. I mean, that's the really important aspect of all of this. So what are your thoughts now at these crossroads? I guess I suppose I should throw in one more thing. Santa Clara County has gone all the way into purple again, correct? They've issued stay-at-home orders ahead of Gavin Newsom's, issue of stay-at-home order, which still hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. Interesting thing though is San Mateo County still is they're holding back on those stay-at-home orders, and I think a lot of it has to do with dissemination of the data and what is actually causing the sudden spike in, and I shouldn't even call it sudden, it's been steadily climbing ever since November. And, there's been some arguing and back and forth about disseminating the data and what the actual cause is. I can tell you what we do know. Large crowd gatherings, especially indoors, is definitely a no-no. We've still seen some of that, unfortunately. So I guess my argument in all of this is personal responsibility. Getting Americans to get on board and just avoid large crowds, especially during the holidays. I mean, probably the biggest spike in November was Thanksgiving, and we're still feeling the effects of it now. And I would imagine Christmas would be even worse because almost everyone gets together for Christmas, even if you don't on Thanksgiving. And of course, you've seen some of the typical things, the meatpacking industry and places where essential workers have to work indoors in close proximity to other workers. Then you have, and it's not just a one-on-one situation, unfortunately. In a meatpacking place, there's hundreds of people literally this close to each other. So, yeah, what are your thoughts now on everything that we just mentioned?
Well, I guess it's the logistics of the whole getting vaccinated. We've heard a lot about how, it's going to be a big push to get people there and to make it happen. Also, to even go get the second dose is the other thing that people talk a lot about.
True, and that's essential though. It's not going to be effective without the second dose.
And who knows, once you go through all these doses, how do you make sure that you're the one who gets your second dose? Who's to say we're not all going to be trying to go after our dose?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
That's easy to say. Okay, we're going to roll it out. We only have 375,000. And you start there. But what happens when you're that person who needs to go get the second dose, and now it's all spread out all over the United States?
Yeah, and that could be a logistical problem. I think more for people that don't have health insurance, because that's a really easy thing to track if you're a part of Kaiser or whomever is your insurance provider. They'll know by looking at your medical chart if you've had your first dose. That's just going to be, maybe that's how you sign up. You get on a vaccination list, and once you get on that list and you have your date, then they probably give you 2 dates. But
are there guarantees that if your second one is going to be available?
I imagine they would have to factor that in to put you on the list, because what would be the point of, say, vaccinating 375,000 people just once and never giving them their second dose? And there could be other things that could come up. Somebody, and I hate to even talk about this, but somebody could die during that time, or something else could happen that would prevent them from being able to get their second dose. But that would be, I would imagine, be contingent on you getting on the list, that it would include the 2 doses, because that wouldn't make any sense. And as you saw with the data we broke down in the last podcast about AstraZeneca, you definitely need those 2 doses. The half dose and the full dose got the efficacy up to 90%. So I can't imagine what the efficacy would drop to if you didn't have that second dose. So I'm not really worried about that part of it. I think I'm more worried about people's perception of the stages, not understanding, what actually goes into developing a vaccine, that there are 3 stages, that they have to peer review all of their research and the data that comes from it. It's not just, hey, we got this vaccine, let's give it to everyone. No, there's a lot of heads that look at the research and the data and decide if this is a safe vaccine. And they're simply not going to just say, oh yeah, this is safe, because they want to get something out there. It's got to be effective and not kill people. So I don't think that's the biggest logistical concern. I think the biggest logistical concern is simply getting enough of these vaccines out. I think the first factory is in Michigan, and getting it out to all the people that need it and transporting it, with the right mechanism of freezing it. And then the other thing is, I think the biggest challenge, even a bigger challenge in the logistics of actually getting the vaccines out to people, I should say to hospitals and health insurance companies, is convincing people this is the right thing to do. Because I would say otherwise normal, rational thinking Americans that would normally get a vaccine are a little bit hesitant right now because of the speed at which it's been happening. And listening to Dr. Michael Osterholm's podcast on Friday night when we drove here, he was definitely worried about people's perceptions of how effective these vaccines are going to be. And I sort of have my own fears, and my own fears are, how do most Americans get their information nowadays? So many of them don't really read about these issues. There's plenty of, here's an article right behind us. There's tons and tons of very easy to understand and disseminate the information in these articles, and from the research, the information is all there. You just simply have to read about it. And if you don't really like reading, you can always watch videos, and there's plenty of really good YouTubers that are doing videos on this stuff. I'd say number one on that list is MedCram. But unfortunately, I find most Americans are getting all their information from one place, cable news. And that makes, and it isn't so much just the cable news, but the commentators. And this is what's so disturbing to me, is that there are people out there that think, Lou Dobbs knows everything in the world about vaccines, or Alex Jones, or name a commentator you can't stand, right? There's tons of them out there. And if all you're doing is listening to Lou Dobbs, you're not getting the full picture about what's going on. And you've sort of punted away your autonomy about how you're going to make these decisions when it comes to vaccines. And then I would say on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that traditionally have been victims of local healthcare systems, African Americans in the South, people of color, indigenous people that may be very suspicious of any vaccine. But, I think along with this vaccine, I think there needs to be, and this is where I really agree with Dr. Michael Osterholm, there needs to be some sort of marketing campaign to assure people that these vaccines are safe and everyone's going to be getting them. There's not going to be a special vaccine for people that live over here, and for people that live over here that are more wealthy and white and whatever, they're going to have a different one. No, it's not. You're going to have these vaccines that have been accepted by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, as safe and effective, and we're all going to be using them. Now, they may be regionally dispersed, and what I mean by that is, I imagine Pfizer will probably be the first drug that hits the Bay Area, the first vaccine. I don't know exactly where Moderna is going to go, if it's going to come here first, or where maybe Moderna is going to be distributed to a different region, some region that hasn't gotten it yet in the country. But they're going to be working around the clock on this. And my heart goes out to these healthcare workers, these nurses, these doctors, but especially the nurses. The nurses are being heavily exposed to COVID every day. They're working long hours. It's a thankless job, I'll tell you, because there's a lot of people in some states that don't even believe they have COVID, and they're dying. And this person's in the process of attempting to save their life, and they're angry at the nurses because they don't have COVID. So yeah, that's my biggest fear right there, misinformation. This seems to be just the number one thing in America now in 2020 is misinformation. Hell, that could be a whole entire podcast.
I was going to say that. I think that is the future of our news, unfortunately,
Yeah.
for a good long time. We've all depended on it for to be accurate, and just the way things have happened over this presidency, things have changed. All of that. So
yeah. Well, and I'll say this. Again, we don't really focus on politics on this podcast, but I will say this. Yeah, of course, there's a lot to be blamed on the Trump administration's mishandling of information. But let's be real. This climate in which one person can manipulate the whole path of information was largely due to the shortcomings of mainstream media, which has been terrible. There's been so many things that have happened in the last 20 years that the media has misreported, and take your pick. The Iraq War, Barack Obama's birth certificate, right?
Led by the person in
right?
charge.
Yes.
I'm telling
But
you,
also,
it's altering our news.
but here's what's so interesting and fascinating about that. He became a victim of that mainstream media as well, right, with Russiagate. So there's another example, like he created a monster and it bit him, right? So there you go. So a lot of people are probably watching mainstream media and going, well, they lied about the Iraq War. Barack Obama was really born in Hawaii, not in Africa. Trump was not a Manchurian candidate. I mean, my God, it's like, I can understand why people really have doubts. But what you have to understand if you are a confused consumer is this. There's a lot of really good medical websites that are not a part of mainstream media. They're not necessarily part of the Washington Post. They're not necessarily part of Fox News or MSN or whatever. Find it. You can get real information and you can read about it, and I highly encourage you to do that. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. But that is my biggest fear, perception. Perception of what these vaccines mean to so many different people. Anything else you want to add to that before we move on to the next topic? We can move on. Okay. All right, so we wanted to go over what some of the leading causes of deaths are, over the last 5 years. And interestingly enough, this is just disturbing, these numbers. So, where did it go? Okay, so what we actually have, if I can find this here, I guess it's on the other one. Hold on, I apologize here, just trying to get all my numbers in order. And there we go. Okay, so a lot of this information is based on 2018 because you just can't have all this stuff instantly. This is actually from 2017. But just to give you some idea, look at the amount of people that have died of heart disease. You literally have 635,000 people that have died of heart disease. That was 23% of all deaths in 2017. And what does that mean when you say heart disease? We're talking coronary heart disease. And of course, heart arrhythmias play a role in that as well. We're going to get into the causes in a little bit. Cancer. This is just equally disturbing. And, the tough part about, trying to live a healthy life is all of us have genetic risks. So, and it can almost be broken down according to whatever your genetic risks are. And for a lot of people, it's heart disease. And for people like my family that are low risk for heart disease, you're going to definitely, if you're not high risk for heart disease, you're high risk for cancer, like my family is. 598,000 people died of cancer last year. 2017. 2017 statistics. 21%, almost 22% of the deaths were in fact cancer. And then as we go down the list, accidents. This is interesting too. Just under 6%, 161,000. And that's just everything's kind of thrown into one category. That includes falls. Not that ever happens. Motor vehicle traffic accidents, risky jobs, people that have dangerous jobs. Chronic respiratory issues, 154,000, just under 6%. And also people that have had strokes, 142,000, which is 5.1%. And then we round things out, Alzheimer's, 116,000 people die of this a year. Diabetes, 80,000, that's just under 3% of deaths in 2017. The flu in 2017 was 51,537. Not that I'm trying to compare this specifically to COVID. We're going to kind of do something like that in a moment, but 51,000 deaths, right? We're at 208, almost 300,000 COVID deaths at this point. Kidney disease, 50,000, just under 2%. And suicide, wow. Now this is a whole entire podcast, right? Mental health issues, which is huge. 44,965 deaths, 1.6% of all the deaths or suicides. We're suicides. Gosh. Okay, and this leads us now. Hold on here. We're going to go right back. This leads us back to COVID, and why are we going to still talk about COVID at the moment? Well, part of the problem is COVID doesn't just affect your lungs. It's not just an inflammatory disease, essentially, to your lungs. It's a multi-system inflammation trigger. So it's not just your heart, it's not just your lungs, it's your heart as well. Whole entire body, basically. Intestines, kidneys, all of it. And as we discussed, brain issues. It can rapidly lead to an increase in Parkinson's. It has contributed to a rapid rise in Parkinson's. Okay, but the most common thing that we're starting to see right now, I think I had it queued up here. Give me just a moment. Inflammation of the heart. So, JMA cardiology studies found that 100 adults who recently recovered from COVID, 78% of them showed some type of cardiac involvement and MRI scans, and 60% had ongoing heart inflammation. The study includes patients from ages 45 to 53 who were from the University of Hospital Frankfurt COVID-19 registry in Germany. They were recruited for the study between April and June. Most of the patients, 67, recovered at home, with the severity of their illness ranging from some type of asymptomatic to moderate symptoms. So we're not even talking about the people in ICU. And I mentioned this in earlier podcasts. A lot of the football players, and the main reason why the Big Ten and the Pac-12 initially canceled their seasons was one major reason: myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart caused by COVID. So you need to find out, even if you're asymptomatic, whether or not you have inflammation in your heart. And if you do, there are steps that need to be taken, because this could increase problems down the road. Okay, anything you want to add to that?
No, there it is about the inflammation.
Yeah.
Myocarditis.
Yeah, usually caused by a viral infection. So it makes sense why COVID would cause this, because it is a viral infection. Yeah. All right, so what we want to focus on now, since we mentioned heart disease and the fact that COVID can have a profound effect on it after you've recovered with myocarditis, is heart disease. And heart disease, right here, right? Did you want to look at this one, the fast stats? There we go. Okay, here are some interesting deaths and mortalities in the United States. So this is overall. The death rate data for the U.S., this is 2018.
Yeah, so you go 1 year from what you were reading earlier at 635 is actually 655,400.
Yeah, and these stats are from 2018.
So a year later.
Yeah.
And so we haven't even gotten to the point where we're going to start looking at this year's data, because we probably won't see it until end of 2021.
And we still don't even have all of 2019's data easy to pop up. So there you go. And COVID started in December of 19, we believe. Probably started about 2 months earlier in China. Probably in October, if I had to guess. Because there's evidence, of course, and many of you have seen this in the news and read articles. COVID was probably in the Bay Area in December. Okay. There's been cases of it, and I suspect that I might have gotten it in December. But who knows? Maybe I didn't. Hopefully I did not. It wasn't tested then, because there were no tests then.
Right.
Okay, so how do you prevent heart disease? That's the big question right now that we want to discuss. And I think before we just dive into that, well, the number one thing you can do right now is not catch COVID, right? Don't become a host, like I've said many times.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, I'll get out of your way here. Okay, yeah, so, but in general, and the reason why we wanted to focus on heart disease this particular episode is because don't forget, take care of your overall health. Don't just act like, okay, it's great, I haven't caught COVID, but you need to take care of your overall health. And heart disease plays a large role in that. Right before, and if you're my age or older, you've heard it from your doctor. They make a big deal about serum cholesterol levels and smoking and alcohol use, right? And here's the irony of it all. Alcohol and cigarettes have traditionally been a legal drug to consume. Yet, how much damage has alcohol and cigarette smoke done to Americans' health and our healthcare systems? It's massive. That's a whole nother podcast within itself. So if you can just avoid smoking, if you can exercise, look, I'm not going to say alcohol's the devil and all this stuff. Yes, I get it. You like alcohol. There's nothing wrong with that. In moderation. And what does that mean? You're not generally going to drink more than 2 drinks when you drink. And that you're not going to make a regular everyday practice of having more than 2 drinks of alcohol per day. And I believe, according to, what is the ADA, that if you have more than 2 drinks per night, or not just per night, per day, you're considered to be an alcoholic. Which is a little bit extreme, I don't know. I knew a guy that worked out like a beast all the time, was in fantastic shape. And he would drink 2 beers a night. And I hesitate to call him an alcoholic.
Beers is, it's more water than anything else.
Yeah, I don't really consider that an alcoholic. However, one of us has had a client that has consumed, half a bottle to a bottle of wine a night. That I consider an alcoholic, for sure. By any other metric, you would consider that person an alcoholic. Okay, so, like we said here, tips for prevention. Of course, lifestyle is the number one thing when it comes to preventing age-related disease. And I know many of you have done 23andMe, and maybe you're freaked out by your genetic information, but go through the tutorials. They've done such a good job on 23andMe at explaining to you what this information, what this information and data they got from your DNA really means as far as your own life. And they all tell you in all the tutorials, your lifestyle choices have the biggest impact on your genetics. Your genetics are simply what they are, potential. Think about that. I may have the potential to be the greatest home run hitter baseball has ever seen. But does that mean I'm going to be the next Barry Bonds? No. Because Barry Bonds worked hard, right? Yes, he took performance-enhancing drugs, but that's a whole nother topic. They all did, so I can't really call that cheating. But my point is, you are not going to develop to your full potential by doing nothing. And it's the same thing with your genetics. If you have a risk towards any of this stuff here, heart disease, strokes, cancer, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. Because the choices you make in your life with exercise, with the food you eat, with how stressful of a life you live, how much sleep you get, just how much you enjoy your life has a profound impact on that as well. So you have a lot of choices over how much of a risk that's going to be. It isn't like a death sentence. Oh my goodness, I have this genetic, potential for I have it for type 2 diabetes. It said that in my 23andMe. I have never had a blood glucose level anywhere near 100. I'm fine because of my lifestyle. Now, if I ever develop a case of being a couch potato-itis, and I sit around and eat ice cream all day and do nothing else, then yeah, I'll probably get type 2 diabetes. But as long as I stay on the trajectory that I've been on, I should be fine.
Or if you develop a pilgrim's habit.
A pilgrim's habit, yes. For those of you that don't know what Pilgrim's is, it's a fantastic bakery place on the El Camino.
It's just okay.
Their pies are off the chains.
Okay, your pumpkin pie and your blueberry pie.
Yeah, they're known for their pies. And they're right off of, they're between Old County Road and the El Camino. They're on the El Camino in Belmont. And if you've ever had pumpkin pie and you haven't had theirs, you haven't had great pumpkin pie. Anyway, but yeah, she made a good point. If you're there every day eating 1,000 calories and donuts, it's high risk. It certainly is. For cholesterol, for everything. And, cholesterol is a very interesting topic as well.
That one's much harder to decipher.
It really is. And again, my heart goes out to people because doctors just walk in and they tell you, oh, your total cholesterol is over 200. Right? Terrified. But what they need to tell you is, well, what's your HDL? Because that's your good cholesterol. What is your LDL? That's your bad cholesterol. Maybe you're just high average in your LDL, but really high in your HDL. There's no reason to panic there. You can make some simple changes and get that down, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily high risk for heart disease. Now, some people may be underneath that 200 threshold, but their LDL may not, but their HDL may be really low, and their LDL may be disproportionately high. That's not good. So, doctors need to explain this stuff. And what does LDL mean? Bad cholesterol, simply low density lipoprotein. High HDL, which is high density lipoprotein, just a fancy word for good cholesterol. HDL, bad cholesterol, LDL. All right? Okay, so anything else you want to discuss about heart disease? What type of exercise is best for maintaining a healthy heart?
I say both.
But I say the same thing. Most people will tell you cardiovascular training, right?
Yeah, most people, they're like, oh, heart health, cardio. But to me, great. You have a great ticker, but you have no muscles.
But see, I think that plays a large role in it.
They do go hand in hand,
Yeah.
but...
I mean, the strength training, I think, is certainly a part of it.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Because think about it. If you're lifting weights all the time, you're gonna upload a lot of glucose to your muscles instead of just sitting, in your fat cells and leading you towards what we call insulin insensitivity. You lift weights and you work on your cardio. All that excess sugar you ate is going to go right to your muscles. Right? That's what fit people can do. That's why you see so many fit people, especially younger fit people, eating pretty much what they want and they're healthy because they exercise hard. Now, that's not to say young people that are fit should eat lousy. You need to eat healthy, nutritious meals, but it's much easier to get away with a dessert when you're the peak level of physical performance.
Right. Well, and it will probably change over time, too, as your body gets older and your system starts to change.
Sure.
And your organs work a little bit differently. You have less hormones. Like, it's a lifelong journey. It's not just, I've done this for my whole entire life and I'm just going to keep doing it for my whole entire life. It has to be kind of tweaked as you go based on like what's going on in your system. And stress plays a big part in it too, which I think is really hard for a lot of people to manage.
True. So I think we should kind of make this a little bit simple for most people to understand, just so they can learn something and include it in their life. Cardiovascular training is very simple. It's moderate to low workload, and it's long duration. And what does that mean? Does that mean getting on the treadmill and sprinting as fast as you can for 2 minutes? And then, making it to 5 minutes covered, so I had a good workout. No. It means getting on that treadmill and walking for about 30 minutes and being able to hold a conversation, possibly. Not getting too out of breath, but be able to constantly respirate, at an elevated level for 30 minutes. That's cardiovascular training. That's how you want to do it. Now, does that mean you have to do that all the time to take care of your heart? No. You could set up a circuit for a half an hour or 40 minutes where you do push-ups over here, go over here, do some rows, go over here, do some squats, do the whole entire circuit, right? And try to not rest too long in between. When we say circuit, we generally mean go from one to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. But you want to take at least a 30-second break because you're going to be too weak to complete the circuit. And you go through that circuit, And if you do that for 30 minutes and you've pretty much been moving the whole time, that's good for your heart too. And it's good for your muscles. So I want to open up a whole new horizon to you all, because many of you walk, which I applaud. It's a great thing to do. But the problem with walking is it really doesn't take care of all of your fitness needs. It takes care of a lot of them. It's a hell of a lot better than doing nothing. It's good for your hamstrings and your quads, and pretty good for your butt muscles as well. Good for posture because you're upright. But it's not as good as a pull-up. It's not as good as a rowing movement. It's not as good as a Turkish get-up. And I'm just kind of throwing exercises out there to get you to understand that if you make, strength training a regular part of your life, include it as cardiovascular exercise or in addition to cardiovascular exercise, then that's good for your heart. Because think about it. You look at all these causes of death, cancer, right? Same thing. Tips for prevention. It's the same thing. Eat properly, exercise regularly. Don't smoke, right? It's almost the same thing for heart disease, right? Let's go down to, accidents is just don't be stupid in most cases. But
but what causes some accidents?
High-risk jobs, right?
Drinking alcohol.
True.
Or being on the other side of somebody who has been drinking and
that's a good point.
Somebody.
Because that's a huge part of what we just mentioned with heart disease, right?
Yeah.
Don't drink so much. Don't get drunk and go in your car. If you do, you're the dumbest man in the world, says Troy Clarity. Okay, respiratory diseases. What causes this? Again, we're talking about smoking. You want to exercise. Let's go, same thing, strokes, right? What causes stroke? Well, strokes, okay, there's a lot of things that cause a stroke, but basically you cut off blood flow to your brain, then you have a serious problem. But what are the things that set the stage for that? And what are the tips for prevention? Again, maintain a healthy weight, exercise more, eat healthier. It's the same thing. Stop smoking, drink only in moderation. You could almost put this in every one of the 10, and thanks to you thinking about how it causes accidents, you could literally put alcohol and smoking in all of these categories. Alzheimer's, well, I don't really want to get into that because there's a lot of things that affect that. But again, tips for prevention, eating healthy, right? Diabetes, this is what I was trying to get to prove the point here. Now, type 1 diabetes is genetic. It's something that people have to learn to live with, and you can. With exercise, with proper diet, you can mitigate it quite well. Type 2 diabetes is usually caused by people that just have a bad lifestyle, that aren't eating properly, that aren't exercising properly. And again, tips for prevention, exercise, 5 days a week, 30 minutes, right? Making sure you maintain a healthy weight, making sure you eat nutritional meals, which of course include protein, fruits, vegetables, and making sure that your blood sugar levels are checked. So there we go. Diabetes, alcohol, smoking, lack of exercise all contribute to heart disease. And it's significantly worse when you get COVID. And from what I'm seeing here from the data is COVID is actually just making the risk factors more of a risk that you may have.
But I feel like also because of the situation that we're in now, a lot of people are not getting checked because...
Yeah, they're afraid to go in.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people, I've had this discussion with clients that they should go to the doctor and they don't want to go in this time. They probably will not go in until middle of next year. And there are some signs that you can tell, for instance, tingling, that maybe it's time to go to the doctor. Yeah. And people have been holding off for, so far, I have somebody who's probably held out for a year.
Yeah, so the take-home message is, even if it's a video appointment with your doctor or a phone appointment, do it. Mm-hmm. And look, you can go into your doctor's office and pretty much have a low risk of getting COVID.
There are not that many people there.
Yeah, there's not that many people there as long as you stay away from the ICU, right? And the rooms are clean. They're always supposed to be clean, but they're extra clean now, I guarantee you. Everyone's wearing a mask. Bring your hand sanitizer with you. It's like when you go shopping, there's really no more of a risk there. And yeah, you should do it. And then, you know, part of the problem of being socially isolated right now for a lot of people is depression, which leads to suicide. So all of these, you know, obviously are topics within themselves, but they all relate to the same thing. It's important that you don't catch COVID, but it's also important that you do all the things you need to do to maintain your health, including, you know, eating properly and exercise. And look, it's inexcusable to say, well, my class, I can't go to my class right now. You can go to your class on Zoom. And if you don't like Zoom, you can go to our, you can join our adaptive PE program for, $45 a month. And you'll have access to our YouTube channel, and we've got non-stop exercise videos. If that's your thing and you prefer to do that, you can follow that too. But my point is, there's plenty of classes out there that are on Zoom, and there's plenty that you can do within the confines of your own home or outside in your neighborhood even. So, no excuses. Exercise.
Yeah, and actually exercise could also help with depression.
Yes.
And if anything, I feel like a lot of people who kind of have these tendencies always say that exercise is really the big one for them, more than anything else. That really helps them get out of depression.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's a really important thing. And if you are suffering from depression right now, and this is the thing I don't understand about depression, is why so many people feel ashamed to have depression. To the life of me, I'll never figure out why there's any negative stigma to it, because it's a health problem like anything else. If you have torn your hamstring twice, you're not a miserable failure of a human being. You're just a person that maybe didn't quite strengthen their hamstrings enough. Maybe you didn't have enough range of motion, or maybe you just got unlucky and just had the same injury twice. That's how we all look at it. But when it comes to mental health, my goodness, people have such negative views of it, like, oh, I don't want to see a shrink. Just that term, shrink. Why do they call a doctor that helps your mental health a shrink? It's just beyond me.
I don't know. For me, that's one of the big parts of somebody that I train, is that they also see somebody who works with them on the mental side, because there are a lot of things that I definitely can't unpack for certain individuals. So having that mental help is really important, along with the exercise and eating well.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. You might not be eating well because of whatever habits or whatever beliefs you have about food. And that definitely falls on the mental side of things. So.
True. And don't think that you can't get yourself help because you're isolated at home. And I get it. For those of you that aren't living with a loved one or married or something like that, I get it. It's a lot harder. But you can reach out to friends. There's a lot of people in your same exact situation that are going through the same things as well. Talk about it. Don't feel like, there's something wrong with you. It's pretty normal to have these fluctuations in the way you feel about yourself and your life.
Yeah, and in fact, even before COVID happened, I think there was a lot happening in our area with people doing startups related to getting medical professional or getting mental help through an app or something.
Yeah.
So I feel like Headspace might be one of them. I can't remember if Headspace is.
Well, I do remember reading an article about how people that are software engineers go through a lot of depression at times, because it's like riding a roller coaster sometimes. You have a lot of success, and you have periods where you don't have as much success, and you get burned out because you work all these crazy hours, and at some point you have to focus on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this is no time better than now to focus on yourself.
Yeah, in fact, it's Michael Phelps is the spokesperson for the app that I'm thinking of, because he talks about mental health.
Okay, well, we can list it in the description, what the app is, if you're interested.
Yep.
And any articles that we have here, I can throw in the description. and you just click on it and you can read what we're going off of here. It's not, it's not really anything complicated. It's just simple articles. But it's nice to talk about this stuff because I don't think enough of us are talking right now. And listening to podcasts is great too. I like to do it a lot. I listen to podcasts at least once or twice a day.
Yeah, we found lots of podcasts.
Yeah, I love podcasts. That's why we started a podcast. I've been wanting to start a podcast for a long time.
Yeah, I'm the one who didn't want to.
Yeah, she didn't want to, but I did. But now, aren't you happy you did?
Sure. I get to watch you.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, anything else you want to add to this discussion?
Nope.
I think it's about time to wrap it up. If you have any questions or comments, please list them. And don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have your own YouTube channel, you can like and subscribe. Ask questions. Leave comments. What's your opinion about a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who feel differently about.
Yeah, tell us. Tell us what you want. It's interesting. Anyway, hope you're having a great weekend. It's nice to get rain finally. It's been raining quite a bit here in San Joaquin and in the Bay Area. All right, so we'll see you in a week. We got a lot of interesting topics coming up. We hope you'll join us in a week. Take care, all right? Goodbye.
Bye.